see, these are his chairs. How cool is that?
So I'm at home.
It was so funny, too, because we brought him from his house, and then I was there last night, and I saw that they had actually moved 2 other chairs in to take up the space. Like, we couldn't have the space open for a night. Like I said, he is the former mayor of Westlake, and he also founded the Westlake Academy. And Scott, I just want to say, I don't think I've ever said this to you. I don't really know, but your example of integrity is, you're the most integrous person I've ever met. And I don't just mean telling the truth. I mean the way that you live your life with conviction from your soul. And I have to say, I don't think I've ever heard you say anything bad about anyone.
You haven't been around me enough.
Well, that's a nice, safe answer, but I don't think it's true. But can you tell us a little bit about where that came from? What was it in your life with your parents or growing up or your background that caused you to believe in your path so strongly that no one can knock you off of it?
Well, I think part of it was growing up in West Texas, where things are tough. The weather's tough. The terrain is tough. And my father was a minister who had started several churches. And as my wife says, my father was as close to being Jesus as any human that she has met. And so I suppose it came from my father.
He lived in integrity.
Yeah, he was a great man. He believed in people. The only time he ever got in trouble in his preaching was when people thought he talked too much about love.
He talked too much about love?
Yeah, that was probably the hallmark of his ministry, is that he believed in love.
Love is
the love of Jesus and the love of man.
What did they take issue with about that?
I think probably some people would prefer to hear hell and brimstone.
The fear.
You know, if you don't do this, these consequences are going to follow.
If we scare people,
And,
we can control
scare
them.
people into being religious.
Gotcha. Do you feel like he taught you more about integrity by telling you things, or just
no more by example.
you just watched
I
him?
just saw that he always told the truth.
And
he
it worked
loved
for him.
people.
And it served him well.
Yeah.
I know you said that I had asked you, because I'm asking everybody, because I want everybody to share this so that kids will understand that they don't have to know what they want to be for the rest of their lives when they're 11 years old. But I had asked you what you wanted to be when you were a kid. What I was trying to get at was how many things you wanted to be when you were a kid and how that changed. But your answer was really interesting. It wasn't really about any particular profession. You said that what you noticed living out in West Texas in a hard scrabble kind of place was that the people that seemed to do well and the people that your father respected were learned.
Yes.
And you took that in.
Yes, I felt like that education was probably the only way to work your way forward. The more you know about things, and I don't mean to say that formal education is the only way of being educated. There are people who learn things in other manners, sometimes just from the school of hard knocks. But I think that having an education does give you an advantage in that you see the world in a different way, in a broader way. And so I've always believed that education was sort of a way to pull yourself, whatever your conditions were.
So you're my kids ended up going to a school that you started because your education, your value of education started way back then. That's kind of amazing. I had never really thought of it that way. And you said that you didn't have a lot of access to educational materials because you were in a small town in West Texas, but you just read all the time.
Right, yeah. My father subscribed to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, which didn't get to Fort Stockton until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I always watched for the paper, and then I read every word on the printed page.
And you still do.
Yeah, I still do. Yes.
You still do. If you ever go to visit Scott Bradley and he's halfway through, just pull up a chair and have your coffee, and he'll be with you in a minute. Because he's always going to finish his paper. So you got out of West Texas and you went to Texas Tech.
Right.
And then you left Texas Tech and you got a scholarship to go to SMU and get your law degree. But in the interim, the government called out to you and you got asked to go in the Army once you were at SMU. Tell me about, if you don't mind, that whole progression of why that never happened.
Well, when I got out of college, I knew that I would have a military obligation, and so I wanted to serve my country. So I signed up for the Naval Officers Candidate School and was sent to Houston for my physical. And I almost decapitated myself. I'm so blind without glasses that I apparently walked into a fan that could have chopped me up. And afterwards, the recruiter said, son, do you have an alternative plan? I don't think you're going to pass the physical. So I said, well, I've got a scholarship offer to go to law school. And they said, well, we think maybe you should take that. And I did.
And you did.
But I'd only been in school about 2 weeks when I got a certified letter from the Navy ordering me to report for duty.
Right, and that happened several times. I mean, your call to service was several times, and then you were in school, so you didn't go, and then you were married, and they weren't taking married people, and then you had children, and they weren't taking people with children, and then you were 35. But you said, it was fascinating to me because you said that's one of your biggest regrets. And what I hear mostly about people who were called to serve and didn't was how they got out of it and all the things that they did so they didn't have to serve. And you said it was one of your greatest regrets. Why did you feel so called to serve?
Well, because so many of our people have served and sacrificed to the nth degree, and it just seemed to me that I should go too.
Well, you did a lot of other amazing things. Instead, you went to the DA's office.
First job out of law school.
First job
Working
out
for
of
the
law school.
legendary Henry Wade. Taught me a lot.
And we were talking about, I heard someone say recently that the presence of fathers in young men's lives is so incredibly important. And I asked you about that, what your opinion was, and you kind of blew me away when you said that of all the people that you defended, of all the young men that you defended, only one had a father who was present. So it is a problem. It is a problem.
Oh yeah, I think it's a great problem in our society where men don't take the responsibility for the children they father. And I think it puts the children at a great disadvantage when they don't have someone there to care for them and to direct them.
Do you think that other men stepping in to help fill that role for a young person without a father can be sufficient, or do you think it needs to be the father?
I think there's a sort of a primal feeling of for your biological father. So I think that there's probably no 100% substitute for having that biological father in your life and participating in your development. But there are other men who can serve as a role model, certainly valuable. Don't you think?
I do. I do. It's a question that I think about a lot, not just from a father perspective, from a parental or nurturing person perspective in general. You know, one thing that's happening a lot, obviously, but with airplanes and cars and roads and things, everyone travels so much. And I mean, for their jobs, they move away from their village, so to speak. They move away from their homes. And they don't have that support system of aunts and uncles and cousins and people around to help. So part of, you know, what I mentioned earlier about connectedness and human connectedness, and I think we have to be more conscious about reaching out and making sure we have those connections. And if we know of someone around us who's struggling, who's a single parent or is struggling in some other way, that as a community we have a responsibility to reach out and help them. And I know you and Kelly have impacted so many lives from people that you've taken in through all of your work. It's been amazing to watch. You're great role models that way. So you were in the district attorney's office, and you guys moved to Westlake.
Right.
And you told me about how you got into public service, this story about just being there, and you were an attorney, and somebody noticed. You want to tell them about that?
Yeah, I went to, well, Westlake was a population of about 187, I think, when we moved there. And the town notices were not posted on a city hall because there was no city hall in Westlake. They were posted in 3 public places, one of those being our front gate. And so I noticed that they were having a meeting at somebody's house, the Dudley Ranch. So Kelly and I went, and I was sitting on the sofa with a fellow named Billy Foster, who was the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And in making small talk, he found out I was a lawyer, and then he stood up and suggested that he was retiring from his job and suggested that they appoint me the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So,
and you did that. And
yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity because you were working with basically a blank slate, because Westlake was not developed enough at that time to have cast the die irrevocably. So I had the wonderful opportunity of helping plan what Westlake would become.
I love that. And you became mayor, and you were telling me about several of the ordinances that Westlake passed that in some cases they were the first ones to pass them. And again, I mean, it comes from your integrity, the things that were important to you that you then built into city code. Can you tell us just a couple of those?
Well, one was a tree rhymes, doesn't it? Tree preservation ordinance, because I think that's important to preserve what nature has given us. We adopted an ordinance prohibiting billboards and restricting the size of signage, because you go through life, you're driving down the freeway and there are all these blinking lights flashing at you, trying to tempt you to clean your clothes there or buy your burger here. And to me, that was just sort of tacky. And so it was important that we adopt something that would control that. Signage is necessary to just direct people to where they need to go, but you don't need to try to drag them off the freeway with your signage, in my opinion.
And you said that you adopted the code that Carmel, California had. And I have to say, if you guys haven't driven through Westlake, it still is just very lovely to drive through. It feels different.
We even took it further and adopted an ordinance called the Dark Sky Ordinance.
Right. Tell about that.
Well, some people still don't like it, I guess, because they're driving through Westlake and everything is dark. But the earth is being polluted with all of the manufactured light that we're putting into the atmosphere. And so the lighting that we have in Westlake is all designed to be contained to the ground. In other words, nothing shoots up, it all shoots down.
Yeah, you said you can't see it from space, right?
Yep.
Right, that's kind of cool. That, to me, like I already said, comes from your integrity to do things right and to pay attention to how to do things better. Again, to that whole thing of visionary and seeing things that don't exist and pursuing them. And then you started the Westlake Academy. So much went into making that happen. It's the first municipally owned.
Well, it wasn't an easy thing because it took a long, long time. It first started when we moved to Westlake, took our daughters to the front gate to catch the bus to go to school, and I noticed there were kids standing around our gate, and we learned that some of them came from across the street, some of them came from the ranch next door. And then a first bus pulls up, takes the kids from across the street about 12 miles to the Carroll School District. A second bus pulls up, takes the kids from next door and takes them 14 miles to the Northwest District. And a third bus pulls into our driveway and backs out, takes my children 5 miles to the south to the Keller School District. So it became very apparent that you would never have a community if you were divided up like that, because we had found that the best friends that we made were the ones that were parents of children like ours.
Right, and you had said that you believe that the school is the soul of the community, and you built it so that they could have other events there and community
It is.
building
It
events there.
and it should be the center of any community because it's developing the most precious resource you have, your children.
I agree with that. And a lot of people don't know that Westlake wouldn't even exist without you and your integrity. It's a long story, and if anybody wants to read about it fictionalized, I've written a screenplay about it. And if anybody wants to produce a movie about it, you know where to find
You'll
me.
take their money.
I'll take their money. Yeah, I think Dustin Hoffman would be a good
Yeah.
would be a good play. It is a long story, but it's I'm sitting here with 7,000 things going through my head about that story. A developer wanted to develop in Westlake in a way that was against their master plan, and it was a developer with very deep pockets who did not know who he was dealing with.
One amusing thing that did happen, and probably the main reason that I gathered so much animosity from the developer was that he had a beautiful plan. It was about this thick and was filled with beautiful, gorgeous pictures that any community would say, yeah, I like that. That's a good vision for the town. But as a lawyer, I knew that the printed word took precedence over the pictures, so I sent it out to have an analysis done as to what would happen under the written plan, and found that we could have 20-story apartment houses. We'd have a population of 81,600, and this is a very small community.
And this was before
And
American Airlines, and
yeah.
it was even a stadium was in there, right?
So, even a stadium was included in there. So we dubbed the plan Pictures by Walt Disney, text by Stephen King.
Integrity and humor. Gotta love him.
But as a consequence, the developer was able to corrupt 4 of the aldermen, posted a notice to remove me as mayor, convicted me of 4 counts of something that by the time we got to the courthouse, nobody, even the people who brought the charges, couldn't remember what they were because they had been made up by the developer's lawyers.
Right. And they locked
so-
the city hall doors and closed
Yeah,
your
they locked me out of
accounts.
City Hall, and I continued conducting the meetings in the hallway.
And you didn't quit, sometimes to Kelly's chagrin, but you didn't quit. And it ended up going to the Texas Supreme Court.
It did, and we won a unanimous decision. It was basically a one-liner. It says Bradley was, is, and remains the mayor of Westlake.
And guys, I mean, they had divided it up. They gave part of it to Fort Worth and part of it to Keller, and yeah, and they had to put it back together. So Westlake exists today because of this guy, which is kind of cool. Well, you, right? Yeah, give him that.
Well, I can't really take credit. The Texas Supreme Court should take credit for actually applying the law.
And humble. Humble, too. Gotta love that. Can you tell me, in this storied life of yours that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, what you are most proud of at this point?
Probably the Westlake Academy, because it has turned out to be everything that we envisioned.
I know, I think about that. Started in 2003, and now here we are in 2018. When you think about every single person that has, for one thing, all the people that moved there because of the school, but then all the people that have graduated. You guys know, like, the butterfly effect and the ripple effect, and I think about all the people who came through there and all the people that they're going to touch. That has to be just a little bit hard to even think about.
Oh, it's, when I see some of these kids that started there and finished and then went on to college, and now they're employed, including your beautiful children, it just blows my mind away at the things that they're doing, as I can see that we have a new generation that is going to keep this country intact and carry it forward.
Thank you for saying that. You know, as my children went off and were meeting people in other parts of the country besides all the people that they went to high school with, and I'm meeting the most incredible 20 and 30-year-olds that completely blow my mind with the way they think and what they want out of the world. And anytime I'm sitting across from someone from corporate America who wants to talk about how they don't know how to motivate these kids, they don't want to work, I'm like, you've got it wrong. You guys are just going to have to shift to accommodate them because they want to be lit up. They want to do things they're passionate about. They want to change the world. They don't want to sit in a cubicle, and they just won't. But if you light them up, whoa, they'll work 90 hours a week.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, they're incredible. We're going to close it with something. I haven't asked you before, so you might have to think about it for a minute, but what do you want your children and your grandchildren to remember about you?
I hope that they will conclude that that I was someone who wanted to make the world better. I know a lot of people want that to happen, but sometimes people feel limitations and they don't really act on their desire to make the world a better place. I was just telling one of your speakers who's coming on about, I was asking if he was familiar with Jimmy Dale Gilmore, the Cosmic Cowboy from Lubbock. One of my favorite lines from one of his songs is, "You say that soon we shall all stand as brothers. Till then, I guess we'll just stand around." And I think that's fairly true.
That kind of sums you up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with
Thank
me.
you for the opportunity to sit with you and to revisit my chairs.
Will you please help me in thanking Scott Bradley for his time on the stage?